Kings Dominion is a pretty awesome amusement park located in Doswell, Virginia. It may not get as much love as parks like Cedar Point and Kings Island, but nevertheless it's a great place for enthusiasts to hang out and ride some awesome coasters. They have a fantastic coaster collection, with them having two top-notch world-class coasters. They have Intimidator 305 and Intamin Giga, and Twisted Timber's an amazing RMC Hybrid. Together these coasters make up one of the best top twos any park can have. But believe it or not, back in 2018, Kings Dominion for a short time had a third world-class coaster that put them on the map with a fantastic top 3. And that third best coaster at the park was the long-lost Volcano The Blast Coaster. This was the single most unique coaster I've ever ridden, and it was loved by so many. Like many of us, I was completely devastated when this coaster was removed, but now that it's been gone for a while, hardly anybody talks about this ride. Instead, they all talk about what ride could possibly replace it. On this channel, I've talked about all sorts of rides that I think could replace Volcano, and in fact I've made an entire video on that topic, but instead in this video I'm going to be focusing on one ride in particular that I think has a very good chance of replacing Volcano, and that ride is the brand new S&S Axis Coaster. In this video, I'm going to be telling you why I think we've all been looking at this wrong, and there's actually a huge possibility that the S&S Axis Coaster could be Volcano's replacement. So join me as I answer the question of, will the S&S Axis Coaster replace Volcano? But like always, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. I post brand new videos every week, and I really appreciate all the amazing support that this channel has been getting. Now this video is going to be a little different than some of my other content on this channel. Usually I like to deal my videos around a broad speculation while answering a single question. I usually don't go too in depth with only one theory. However, this is a video that I simply couldn't resist making because I think a lot of us are overlooking some very important evidence, and I actually think we know more about Volcano's replacement than you think we do. So this video is basically one giant bold prediction, but now let's get to the video. Ever since Volcano's removal, there has been countless speculation on what coaster could replace it. The most popular rumored coasters are a Gerstlauer Infinity, a B&M Wing, a GCI, a Vekoma STC, and a Raptor, and now the S&S Axis. Up until recently, the B&M Wing coaster was at the top of the list because leaked plans were discovered by KDFans.com. These plans depicted a small wing coaster to come to the park in 2021, but these plans actually never came to fruition, so it leaves us with yet again another empty slate. But these plans aren't useless. In fact, I think these plans tell us some very important information that we sometimes overlook. I think these plans tell us the exact price range of whatever coaster is going to replace Volcano. Let me explain. If you look at the plans closely, you'll notice that the wing coaster is extremely small. If the planned wing coaster really did get built, it would only be about 100 feet tall, and to my knowledge that would make it the smallest wing coaster. To put this in perspective, Wild Eagle is 135 feet tall, so this wing coaster would be considerably smaller. And on top of this, the ride duration of the ride would only be about 30 seconds from the drop to the brake run. So you're most likely asking yourself, why is this coaster so small? And my answer to that question is, Kings Dominion probably couldn't afford anything else. Like all B&M coasters, wing coasters are incredibly expensive, and considering the fact that Kings Dominion isn't at the top of Cedar Fair's priorities, and it starts to make sense. My theory is that Kings Dominion probably went to B&M with a price limit like $15 million, and B&M did the best that they could within the budget, but in the long run, Kings Dominion probably decided it wasn't worth it to get a mediocre B&M and instead to get something else. This is the first reason that they could get the Axis. The Axis is a coaster made by S&S, which means it would be substantially less expensive than a B&M and would most likely fit in Kings Dominion's budget. But that's only the beginning of why the Axis coaster fits perfectly. The second reason is the fact that Cedar Fair officials are most likely very familiar with the Axis coaster. When the Axis was announced, it received a huge amount of press, and during this initial period of time, according to S&S, many clients came to see the Axis coaster and got to ride the prototype. Now these people are most likely high-ranking officials from every major amusement park chain. This would almost 100% include Cedar Fair, and on top of this, we know for a fact that at least one Axis coaster has been sold because of these private showings. In fact, S&S themselves said that we will see this in a park in the not too distant future. Now, I don't think Kings Dominion will be the first to get the Axis, but even if another park like Six Flags Fiesta Texas got one, it wouldn't exclude a park like Kings Dominion from getting one. So Cedar Fair officials most likely expressed interest in this ride at one point in time. And the third reason that I think Kings Dominion could get the Axis coaster is the fact that they are already working with S&S for the 4D free spin. Up until recently, we didn't have any proof that the 4D free spin was even coming in 2021, but as of when I'm recording this video, actual 4D free spin track is on site at Kings Dominion. In fact, this is the first time in recent years that Cedar Fair has even worked with S&S, so this could be the start of a long partnership with S&S, and if Cedar Fair works long enough with them, I'm sure that we will see an Axis come sooner or later, and I think Kings Dominion would be the perfect candidate. Literally out of all the parks in the Cedar Fair chain that could get an Axis, Kings Dominion would be at the top of the list. When they removed Volcano, they removed arguably the most popular ride in the park as well as a staple attraction. Volcano was the park's only inverted coaster, and removing it puts a huge gap in their lineup. An Axis would not only somewhat fill the gap of an inverted coaster, but it would also be a very worthy economical successor to Volcano. On top of this, it would also compete very well with whatever BGW adds in the same year. So I honestly think if they did manage to get the Axis, it would not only be a great investment, but it would also work very well for the park. Now I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. You're probably saying to yourself that there's no way that they can get the Axis because they're getting the 4D free spin in 2021. And at first glance, having two 4D type rides seems counterintuitive. But what a lot of people are overlooking is that even though the Axis is technically a 4D coaster, it's actually very different. While the ride experience does share similarities with a ride like a 4D free spin, I see no reason why a park can't have both a 4D free spin and an Axis. The Axis is basically a game changer for the entire coaster industry. I can easily see it complementing a 4D free spin rather than taking away from it. This means parks like Six Flags Fiesta Texas and Kings Dominion can have both a 4D free spin and also get the Axis. So if Kings Dominion did end up getting the Axis, I would assume it would be in 2022 or 2023. The reason I say that they could possibly get it only 1 year after the free spin is something I like to call the package deal possibility. This is also the fourth reason why I think the Axis is a huge contender for Volcano's replacement. You may not be fully convinced that Kings Dominion will get the Axis because they're already getting the free spin in 2021, but that's not necessarily the case, because there's something called a package deal. A package deal is where a park or chain buys multiple coasters, and because they buy more than one, they receive some sort of discount. The most well-known example of this is SeaWorld buying two Skyrocket 2s and receiving some sort of discount on the third one. I also assume that the same thing happened with Six Flags with all those 4D free spins. This is beneficial to both parties of the deal. The buyer receives a discount and the seller makes another sale. So could the same thing possibly be happening with Cedar Fair? Well, I honestly think it's a very likely possibility. You see, I kind of find it hard to believe that Cedar Fair would just contract S&S for only the 4D free spin. So maybe Kings Dominion has a little more up its sleeve. And like I said earlier, this would be the ideal Cedar Fair park to test a prototype ride at. So I could easily see Cedar Fair testing the ride here before a larger, more important park. But the park is also large enough that the investment wouldn't be a wasted one, such as an investment at a park like Michigan's Adventure. And the fifth reason that the Axis coaster seems like the best choice is the reason of Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and this is something that gets overlooked a lot. A lot of people don't realize it, but Busch Gardens Williamsburg and Kings Dominion are so close together that they essentially have to compete against each other for attendance. A lot of people downplay this, but even though these parks complement each other nicely, they are constantly at war against each other. When I lived in Virginia before I was an enthusiast, my family would have season passes to either Busch Gardens Williamsburg or Kings Dominion. We would hardly ever get season passes to both, and I believe the majority of non-enthusiasts fall into this category. Yes, I believe that the majority of general public alternate which park to get season passes to each year. For instance, in 2018 when Kings Dominion opened Twisted Timbers, some locals probably decided to visit Kings Dominion rather than Busch. So why am I telling you this? Well, one of the most important factors in my theory of Kings Dominion getting the Axis is its marketability. You see, Kings Dominion and Busch Gardens hardly ever add coasters within the same year. This minimizes competition and benefits both parks. That's just how the balance works and how it's been working for the past couple of years. But now that Busch Gardens has been beating Kings Dominion for a while, Kings Dominion really needs to step up their game. And because of the virus, the 4D free spin is initially going to have to compete with Pantheon. And in my opinion, Pantheon will definitely win. This is not something that Kings Dominion wanted, but it's most likely going to happen. So I believe that the trend of Busch not adding a coaster in the same year as Kings Dominion is coming to an end. And this is why I believe that the Volcano replacement is going to have to be something easily marketable. Now that they have to compete head to head with Busch, the Volcano replacement will most likely have to directly compete with Busch Gardens' Giga shuttle coaster. And it may or may not be added in the same year, but it will most likely compete in one way or another. And out of all of the budget coaster models that Cedar Fair could pick, the Axis Coaster is the only coaster that I think has a chance of gaining more media attention than BGW's quote-unquote Giga. Even though enthusiasts don't love Dragonspire, I'm positive that if the coaster gets built, the general public will go insane. Not only is it intimidating, but it also will provide a very unique ride experience to Virginia that the Virginians haven't seen before. So the only coaster that Kings Dominion could afford that would provide ample media attention would be the Axis. And that in my brain is where it just clicks. The only coaster that can compete with Dragonspire is something as unique as the Axis. Everything I talked about in this video all builds up to this point. The price, the company, the park, and even its marketability all seem to make sense for this coaster, and in my opinion, nothing would work better than the Axis. So I predict that in 2022, Kings Dominion will indeed get the S&S Axis. I hardly ever make a prediction so bold as this, but for me it looks to be the perfect addition. This would complement the 40 free spin very well, and would also be a worthy successor to Volcano. It would also provide the media attention that this park so desperately needs. Along with this coaster, I also predict that the area of the park that it's in would get some sort of enhanced theming. Now I fully understand that there's a giant possibility that this wouldn't happen, but the purpose of this video is for me to just get my theory out there, so if it does end up happening, I can claim every bit of the glory. I'm just kidding, but let me just say that if they do get the S&S Axis, I wouldn't be a bit surprised. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see content just like this every week, and comment below your thoughts on Kings Dominion getting the S&S Axis Coaster. How many of you guys actually think it's possible? This is the Coaster Josh signing out.